let's create an animation where we show how to manipulate shapes in After Effects. Ready? Let's get started. First, we'll create a new composition. I'll choose a resolution of 1080 by 1080. To maintain the aspect ratio, disable scaling to ratio. Enter the parameters, name your composition, and set the duration to 4 seconds. That's enough. Let's change the preview screen background to white for better clarity. Once our composition is ready, go to the pen tool and draw a straight line. As you probably already know, the icon at the bottom of the screen allows you to toggle transparency on or off, which is very useful. Set the stroke width to 4 pixels, round the ends of the line and remove the fill. In the Align tab, center the line. For convenience, rename the layer to Line. Next, let's bring this line to life. Open the Layers properties and, from the Add menu, select Trim Path. Create keyframes for the start and end parameters. Press U to only see the parameters where keyframes are set. At the start of the composition, set both to 50%. Then, at the 1 second mark, set Start to 100% and End to 0%. Now press space and see how the animation looks. Great, but we can make it even better. Select our keyframes, right-click, choose Keyframe Assistance, and then Easy Ease, or just use the F9 shortcut. To make the animation smoother, let's open the Graph Editor. Switch to the Selection tool and move the graph's peak to the left. This will make the animation start faster and then slow down. Perfect! We can return to the previous view, select the Start parameter, go to the Easy Copy plugin, and copy this graph. Now we can paste it onto the second parameter. Next, let's add a shape. It will be a rounded rectangle. Remember to deselect the line layer before adding the shape, otherwise, the rectangle will be drawn on the same layer. In the Properties tab, increase the corner rounding. In the Align tab, center the object. Place the timeline marker at the start. I want this rectangle to float above the line and rotate around its axis. Create keyframes for the position and rotation parameters. Press P to show position, and Shift+R to show rotation. At the start, set the shape at the bottom of the screen. In the 12th frame of the animation, we move it upwards and set the rotation to 355 degrees, so it looks like it almost fully rotated, but not quite. Go to the first keyframes, copy them with Ctrl+C, and paste them with Ctrl+V. Use the N key to trim the playback preview of our animation. And we have something like this. What's next? Let's add some effects to make the whole thing look more professional. Select all keyframes and use Easy Ease again, then go to the Graph Editor. We want the shape to accelerate upwards and then accelerate as it falls, a small gravity effect. Exit this view, select the position keyframes, copy the graph with Easy Copy, and paste it onto the second parameter. And one more thing, we want our object to disappear when it goes under the line. So we'll create a solid layer. Adjust its size to match the composition. Give it a name. And choose a color. Temporarily disable the background visibility to make this easier. Move the line above the floor. Using the shortcut Ctrl+D, I will duplicate the solid layer and drag it to the very bottom, then rename it to BG. We can lock the background layer to prevent accidentally moving it. For now, let's turn off its visibility. Using the Selection tool, I'll move the floor so that the layer is perfectly aligned behind our line. We can now turn the background visibility back on. this is what we have. Rename the shape to Shape 1. Let's split the layer at the first second, just use the shortcut Ctrl+Shift+D. We can set our preview to load for 2 seconds. Enable the visibility of all keyframes by pressing U, and now we can delete any unnecessary ones. At the start, place the shape higher, and in the properties, choose Fill and set it to solid color, changing it to purple. Now, in the size parameter, we need to enlarge our shape, and then increase the corner rounding. You can adjust the parameters as you see fit. For now, we have no animation, the doors just appear in the first second. I think I can move them a little higher. We can place the time marker in the first second, and in the Shape 2 parameters, find position, just press P on the keyboard for the quickest way. Create a keyframe here, move the marker forward using Ctrl+ right arrow by 4 frames. And then create a new keyframe. You can use these arrows to navigate between keyframes, so go back to the first keyframe. Set our doors so that they are not visible. Add easy ease because why not? Go back to the Shape 1 layer and duplicate it. Move it on our timeline. Delete the keyframes, press U on the keyboard and delete. Move the shape under the line. Decrease the shape size in the size parameter. Create keyframes at the 1 second mark in the 4th frame for position and rotation. Move 6 frames forward and create the animation there. Move the object to the very top of the doors. However, this shape should be visible here, so we need to bring it above our doors. We can immediately notice that there's no fill, so we need to add it. For me, it'll be white. I think we can make the shape a little smaller. Move it a bit higher and maybe add one more rotation in the rotation parameter or, as before, around 335 degrees, so it doesn't quite fully rotate. So, at the 1 second mark in the 12th frame, let's paste the keyframes from the object's original position. The fall motion doesn't look natural, but we can copy the easy ease from Shape 1 using Ease Copy, then select, Copy, and paste the keyframes into Shape 3. There's an improvement. Now it's time to add an impact effect. First, let's rename this layer to Door and change the color so that it stands out from the other elements. Let's collapse the layers to hide the unnecessary parameters. In the door layer, we need to find rectangle path 1 and convert it to curves by selecting Convert to Bezier Path. Now we'll use the Create Null from Path tool, which can be found in the window menu. Once activated, a window will pop up. To make the tool work, we need to select the path we want to apply this effect to and choose Points Follow Nulls. This will create additional null layers. Sometimes the points are created in the wrong place, like in my case. Let's undo this with Ctrl+Z. To ensure the points are created in the correct location, we need to find the position and anchor point in the rectangle's transform properties for the whole layer, then right-click and select Reset on both parameters. Now let's select the path and create the null again. This time, the points are created exactly where we want them. We won't need the panel anymore, so we can close it. Now, just drag one of these points, and our doors will follow it. Adding this effect made the doors stop animating as before because all the points of the shape are connected to the door path layer. Therefore, we can remove the position animation. Now, we'll create a new animation but use another null object named Control Door. Let's move it above all the door layers and connect the remaining layers to it. Set the color to orange. Now we can create an animation for the position parameter. In this case, we'll move our object under the line. Set the time marker at the point where the door will already be fully visible. Let's move on to animating individual door points. Select the points where we want to create the animation and set keyframes for their positions. Press U to reveal those keyframes. 2 frames later, we'll create an effect where the door gets deformed from the impact, and the sides contract inward due to the stretching. This is how it looks. About 5 frames later, the effect should start returning to its original shape, so I'll paste the first keyframes from these layers at this point. Now we'll apply anticipation. Before the final return to the correct shape, the object should deform in the opposite direction. 2 frames later, we paste the keyframes for the original shape. For the second keyframe, add Easy Ease, and in the graph editor, adjust the speed so that shape 3 doesn't go outside the door, just tweak the graph a bit. Adjust it so that the object doesn't stick out too much beyond the door anywhere. After a few adjustments and corrections, it should look like this. Let's leave it like that. We can collapse all the parameters now. We'll add one more object, this time, a circle. The stroke and fill can remain black and white. We need to center the shape and make it slightly larger. I'll rename it to Circle right away. Keeping the project organized can save time when making corrections or changes later. This shape should be placed under the door layer. We want the circle to shoot upward when the door is hit. Let's place the marker on the timeline when the door is stretched. And using the shortcut Alt+, square bracket, we'll trim the layer to the marker. Click P and move the circle so that it's hidden. Create a keyframe. Now, let's create the animation at 1 second and 12 frames, the circle will shoot up. And at 1 second and 20 frames, it will fall back behind the door. Add F9. And go to the graph editor. We want the circle to shoot up quickly and slow down as it rises, then speed up when it falls. We can adjust it so that it doesn't slow down to 0, just lift the graph a bit at this point. Let's return to the previous view and trim the layer. Now, we'll also add the impact effect when the circle hits the door. Once again, we'll create keyframes for position in the door. I think they can be at 1 second and 19 frames. Create a keyframe. Or maybe a few frames earlier. A few frames later, let's add the effect of the door denting from the circle's impact. Under the impact, the top of the door will flatten, and the sides will expand. Now we want to return to the original shape. We can create these keyframes at 2 seconds and 4 frames by copying the first ones. but this time we'll add anticipation. Under the force of the previous impact, the door may stretch outwards. And only 2 frames later will it return to its original shape. Let's see how it looks now. I think we can add more deformation after the impact on the door. You can experiment on your own and create an even more noticeable effect. We can apply easy ease to those keyframes. Now we'll create a frame around our doors. We can duplicate one of our shape layers. Let's move the layer to the point where the door returns to its original shape. Delete the keyframes from it. In the Properties panel, adjust the size and position, and set the appropriate corner rounding. Now let's create the appearance animation. Move the layer to 2 seconds, and use the shortcut Alt+ square bracket to trim the layer at that point. I'll rename it to Door Frame. This time, we'll animate position and scale. Create the first keyframes, and at 2 seconds and 6 frames. Create the next keyframes. Go back to the first ones, and here, change the scale parameter to 85% and move the object down. Also, add easy ease. Next, I'll add the stairs and a bouncing ball that will fall down them. To create a staircase, we'll draw a line using the pen tool. This will be our first step. Remove the background and increase the stroke width. 40 pixels should work well. It's essential to stay organized, so let's name this layer accordingly. The first step of the stairs should be longer, so select the path parameter and drag one end to extend the line. Now, we'll add the trim path parameter to create a drawing animation. If the animation starts from the wrong end, you can change which point is the start. Finding the right moment for the staircase to appear is key. Once you've found it, set the layer to start at that point. Use the shortcut Alt+ left square bracket to align the layer's start to the playhead. Now, let's create the starting animation. Hold Ctrl or CMD on Mac and Shift to move the playhead 10 frames forward. Here, we'll set the start to 100%. To add more steps, use Repeater. Enter the effect, which creates copies of the object. For now, let's set it to 3 copies. In the Transform tab, set their position. Start with the position at 0. Since the line thickness is 40 pixels, set the X position to -39. Now, adjust the Y position. Next, use the position parameter for the entire layer to position the staircase. It's a good idea to add another step by changing the number of copies in Repeater from 3 to 4. Now, let's create a mask to show only the desired part. I'll use an existing layer called Door, duplicate it, and move it to the top. If you can't see this option, click Toggle Switch to change the panel view, and connect Star to the door layer. To add some dynamics, I want the door to slightly shrink as the stairs appear. So, I'll link the door layer with the door frame to control both layers. I'll animate the scale parameter, add a keyframe, then a few frames later, scale down the door a bit. Add easy ease to these keyframes. Change the preview area to be rendered. Using the B shortcut, trim the preview to the playhead. If a layer disappears, extend it as needed. For the bouncing ball, we'll use a circle. Set the color to white and the outline to black, with a stroke of 3. The circle looks too small to me, so I'll increase its size parameter. Position the ball so that it becomes visible once all the steps are in place. Set the layer's start point at this moment. We want the ball to be on the top step. Currently, the ball is going outside the door, so we need to set a mask to make it visible only within the door frame. Now, create a position animation. A few frames later, set the ball on the second step. To make the movement more realistic, add a keyframe where the ball is in midair. The animation feels too fast, so select all keyframes and hold Alt to proportionally stretch the animation's duration. Make some adjustments using the Curve tool to refine the motion path. Add easy ease to the keyframes and, in the graph editor, adjust the speed. We want the speed to peak at the start and end. Select keyframe velocity and check continuous to keep the motion smooth between keyframes, avoiding sudden speed changes. You can now increase the speed in certain places, but make sure the ball doesn't stop mid-air, it should keep moving. The animation is almost done. Add a simple expression to continue the bouncing. Loop out offset. I see that my composition is too short, so right-click and choose Composition Settings, then set the duration to 8 seconds. Now, extend the layers to prevent them from disappearing. Select the layers and use Alt plus right square bracket to extend them to the end. Lock the layer to finalize it. This is our animation. Let's add a second bouncing ball. If the ball moves out of the frame, if the ball falls out of the frame, all we need to do is move the floor and lines to the top of our layers. Let's lock these two layers. Now, let's create a circle that will fall from the top, causing a chain reaction, and boom. Let's make the circle slightly bigger to give it some weight. I'll position it at the starting point and name it Drop Circle. I'll also move it below the floor. To make sure the circle is only visible where needed, I'll create a mask. Now we'll proceed to the position animation. Let's position the ball above the doors so it's out of sight. The circle can start falling at the point where the ball bounces on the last step. We'll create the animation as follows. In the first frame, the circle is high above the doors. And 10 frames later, it hits the ground. To make the fall look more natural, we can add easy ease and set the layer to start at this point. Now, in the graph editor, we'll adjust the falling speed to make the animation look better. Now comes the highlight. When the circle hits the ground, our doors will pop open instantly. We'll connect all elements to the control door layer and set the position animation. The stairs also need to move, so we'll link them to this layer. However, I'm encountering a problem. When the doors are up, and I try adding rotation, the path starts to break. We'll solve this differently. Let's go back to the beginning of the timeline. Select the layers that make up the door, and create a pre-composition named door. We'll connect this pre-comp to control door, but remember to place the time cursor at the start. Let's check if everything works. Oops! The stairs have disappeared because the door mask isn't linked to control door, so we need to connect it again, with the cursor at the beginning. Now, when the ball hits the ground, we'll add a keyframe for the position of control door. 10 frames later, the doors should jump into the air. Creating a new composition cut off part of the door, so we'll go into composition settings and increase the height. I see another problem. There's a larger gap at the bottom than at the top of the door frame. To fix this, let's go into the layer and adjust it so that the gaps at the top and bottom are equal. Using the position option, we'll set proper alignment. Returning to the main composition. 10 frames later, the doors should drop back down. Next, we'll add easy ease to the frames and change the speed in the graph editor so that the doors move faster at the beginning and end, making it look more natural. I don't want the doors to pause at the top, so in keyframe velocity, we'll select continuous. Let's raise the point to prevent the doors from stopping at the top. We can make them jump even higher if we want. Now it's time to add rotation animation in the same frames as the position animation, setting the rotation to 13 degrees. For better visibility, I'll turn on solo mode and set the rotation to 6 degrees. We'll add F9 and easy ease. The animation looks great. I think it might start slightly earlier. I can add an animation where the doors will get smaller after popping up. We'll create this animation using scale. Let's move on to the ball. We'll add additional movement to it. At the very start, we can raise its position slightly since it initially bounced off the floor. The ball should move vertically, and as the doors fall, the ball should also start falling down at the moment the doors do. Additionally, we'll create animation for the stairs so they aren't static. Let's go into the layer parameters and choose repeater. Meanwhile, we can remove the fill. In transform repeater parameters, we'll first create position animation, increasing the distance between the steps. We'll also add rotation animation to create the impression that the steps are falling apart. Here's how it looks now. Finally, we want the line to fade out, so we'll unlock the layer, copy the keyframes, paste them at the end, choose Time Reverse Keyframe, adjust the fade duration, and the animation is complete.